All right, let's jump right into this explainer and completely unpack one of the most mind-bending third acts in sci-fi history. We're talking about Christopher Nolan's 2014 masterpiece, Interstellar, and specifically, we're going to decode its deeply debated ending. You know, for a film rooted so heavily in rigorous astrophysics, the final act audaciously collapses time, love, and theoretical physics into a single narrative sequence that literally still has audiences arguing a decade later. It's the kind of sequence that demands we rethink everything we know about how the universe operates, somehow blending the absolute coldest, hardest equations of quantum mechanics with the deeply emotional core of the human experience.
Now, this central mystery pulls us right into the paradox from the very beginning. You remember young Murph, right? Convinced her bedroom is haunted, she thinks a poltergeist is trying to communicate with her by knocking objects off her shelves. But as the narrative unfolds, we realize this isn't a supernatural haunting at all. Actually, scratch that. It's a scientific one. The entity communicating with her isn't some spectral figure from the afterlife. It's completely bound by the laws of physics, using a medium that we only barely begin to understand as the film sets its grand stage.
Section 1. The ghost was always Cooper.
When we really look back at it, the early clues about gravity moving across dimensions were just sitting there quietly in the background all along. When Cooper and Murph noticed those books mysteriously falling, or that dust forming precise, thick lines on the floorboard after a massive storm, they aren't just looking at strange weather patterns. They're observing localized gravitational anomalies. The film introduces this absolutely vital concept early on. Gravity is a force that can actually bleed through dimensions. And importantly, it doesn't experience time the way we do. Those thick lines of dust translating into binary coordinates, yeah, those weren't an accident. They were a deliberate push from somewhere or somewhen else.
So the crucial takeaway here is that inside the black hole, Cooper wasn't just sitting back and watching the past unfold like a movie, he was actively interacting with it to send coordinates. When he crosses the event horizon of the supermassive black hole Gargantua, he doesn't get crushed into nothingness by infinite gravity. Instead, he ends up in a higher dimensional space where he realizes the ultimate twist. He literally becomes the very ghost that haunted his daughter. The sheer terror of falling into a black hole gives way to this profound realization. Every single book he pushed, every pattern he formed in the dust, was Cooper desperately sending messages backward in time using gravity as his messenger.
Moving on to Section 2. Decoding the causal loop.
This is where things get really wild. The massive time jumps and missing years caused by extreme time dilation near the black hole basically lock our characters into their destined paths. Based on the film's timeline, the Endurance launches in 2067, but because of the intense gravity near Gargantua, time slows down dramatically for the crew. Relativity becomes this tragic antagonist. Every single hour spent on Miller's water planet, that cost them 7 years of Earth time. Later on, a desperate slingshot maneuver around Gargantua cost another 51 years in the blink of an eye. By the time Cooper wakes up rescued near Saturn, it's roughly the year 2156. The agonizing reality here is that while he is barely aged a day, his daughter has become an elderly woman nearing the end of her life.
You see, future humanity didn't just cross their fingers and bank on chance. They placed the wormhole and the Tesseract knowing it had already happened in their history, making cause and effect exist simultaneously. It's what physicists call a bootstrap paradox. Highly evolved humans of the future construct this space so Cooper can send the quantum data back to Murph. Murph then uses it to solve the gravity equation, allowing humanity to survive, leave a dying Earth, and eventually evolve over millions of years into the very beings that reach back to build the Tesseract in the first place. It is a perfectly closed loop. Humanity is the architect of its own salvation, creating the very past that allowed them to survive.
Let's get into Section 3. Future humans and 5D space.
Okay, so to truly wrap our heads around how Cooper could tap a bookshelf across decades, we have to grasp the mind-bending physics the film proposes. In our everyday world, time is a strict one-way street, right? Our universe operates in 4 dimensions, 3 of space, 1 of time, pushing us linearly forward from the past into the future. But to the advanced bulk beings in the Tesseract, every moment in Murph's room exists all at once, spread out like pages in a book. They exist in a 5-dimensional space, the bulk, where time is not an arrow, but a physical structure. Just imagine the profound disorientation of being a 3-dimensional creature suddenly walking through a room where you can simply step to your left to visit yesterday or reach up your hand to grab tomorrow. And the brilliant part is the movie actually grounds these wild ideas in real-world theoretical physics. It draws on concepts like brain cosmology and M-theory, where gravity can essentially bleed out of our universe and into higher dimensions. Kip Thorne, the renowned physicist and Nobel laureate who advised on the film, ensured the math you see heavily featured on Murph's chalkboards wasn't just Hollywood gibberish. Those complex equations tackle the ultimate challenge in modern physics, unifying general relativity, which governs massive bodies like stars and black holes, with quantum mechanics, which governs the subatomic world. The film beautifully suggests that accessing this higher dimension inside a black hole provides the exact observational data needed to finally complete that unifying equation.
Which brings us to Section 4, Love as a Navigational Tool.
But here's the thing. Traversing a five-dimensional physical space requires a compass. And this brings us to a really profound and honestly intensely debated narrative choice in the film. Framing love not just as a fleeting human emotion, but as a quantifiable gravitational force that transcends dimensions. In this boundless five-dimensional space, Cooper needs a way to find a specific moment in a specific room out of infinite cascading possibilities. The film posits that his deep, unbreakable connection to his daughter operates like gravity itself, pulling him precisely to where he needs to be. It suggests that love is an artifact of a higher dimension that we can consciously perceive, even if we don't yet fully scientifically understand it.
And now on the exact opposite side of that coin, we have some highly skeptical audience members who felt this concept was, well, a bit of a cheesy, unscientific plot convenience that completely broke the film's hard sci-fi rules. We see this debate clearly across forums and analysis boards. A lot of viewers felt that turning something as abstract and poetic as love into a physical, navigational mechanic kind of undermined the rigorous, mathematically sound astrophysics that Kip Thorne worked so hard to establish for the rest of the runtime. But regardless of where you stand on this philosophical divide, we're just reporting what's there. The film's narrative explicitly and unapologetically relies on this emotional mechanic to close its loop.
Whichever side you take, the film explicitly states that Cooper uses this emotional connection to pinpoint the right timeline. He taps Morse code into that watch's second hand. Because the five-dimensional bulk beings can't easily find a specific singular point in time on their own, since, they view all of time simultaneously, Cooper has the necessary human element. He takes the complex quantum data gathered by the robot TARS, translates it into binary and Morse code, and alters the gravity of the watch he left behind for Murph decades ago. In doing so, he turns a simple, sentimental token of a father's promise into the exact tool of humanity's salvation.
And finally, Section 5, Building the Physical Tesseract.
So think about this. How do you actually visually represent a space where time is a physical, looping dimension without completely losing the audience? What's genuinely amazing here is that Christopher Nolan opted for a practical build instead of heavily relying on a green screen. He wanted the actors to physically inhabit the abstract concept of time. The complex, grid-like structure of the Tesseract, repeating Murph's room into visual infinity, was built physically on a massive soundstage. By using 15 separate physical projectors to create the dynamic, scanning light effects and providing actual strings for Cooper to pull, the actors could ground their performances in a tangible reality. They weren't just pretending in front of a blank green wall, they were literally interacting with a physical representation of a multi-dimensional construct.
Oh, and here is a really surprising piece of trivia for you. If they had actually gone with Jonathan Nolan's original script, we wouldn't have this causal loop or emotional reunion at all. Cooper simply would have been stranded to die. Yeah, early drafts of the film were much, much darker. In that version, Cooper sends the data back, but the wormhole immediately collapses. He's left entirely alone in the dark, never knowing if his sacrifice actually worked, and he never gets to see Murph again. It was Christopher Nolan who took that script and introduced the Tesseract concept, transforming a tragic, isolated sacrifice into a total mind-bending story of transcendent connection and survival.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. Was this film just a beautifully constructed puzzle box, or could it be a bold prediction of our own evolutionary timeline? The ending of Interstellar isn't just about a brave astronaut escaping the crushing gravity of a black hole. It's a really profound statement about human potential. It challenges us to look beyond our current three-dimensional limitations, to study the stars, and to wonder, millions of years from now, might we just master the universe well enough to reach back through the fabric of time itself and become our own saviors?